So, unfortunately, the phone's dead. If I was super fancy, I'd have an on screen display and an editor to really showcase all of this. So, we're going to change topics a bit from the equalization of everything and how to set all that up, because for the most part, your instrument should just do it. Um, you know, besides tuning in your kick drums and your snares, for the most part, everything should be done. So let's talk about mic placement. So for the kick drum, you got your big kick drum mic. It's like that big. It's huge. It goes right in the hole, or right where the hole would be. It's that simple. The kick drum is just super easy. Just get a little short stand, you're done. For the snare mic is always the hardest mics to place because the drummer always whacks it. In the ideal world, we'd love to have it. Props. We'd love to have it right here, right in the middle of it. But in reality, we oftentimes will put it right to the side on the other side of the drummer's hand. So basically on the far side of the kit. We can also have other things like clip mics that do the same exact thing but don't need a stand. Those are really great, but they oftentimes are expensive, and with naive and novice drummers, the tendency is to whack them because they want to get the sound into them. I've seen this on several occasions. They're pretty tough, but they still break often. For toms, pretty much the same logic goes throughout. Yeah, it's just another drum, but most of the time with the toms we end up having more space because they're bigger drums. So for the hi-hat, what we want to do is we want to be right under it, not on the side he's hitting, on the other side, because if it's the side he's hitting, it's going to go, but if it's the side he's not, it's going to go. If you've ever seen a cymbal in slow motion, it will literally bow. So it's really important that you don't put it on the side he's whacking on. If you do, you're gonna break a microphone. And you usually want it to be about 1.5 to 3 inches. You really don't want to go farther than 3. You'll start to get bleed from other instruments, and you really want strong signals. Let's see, what else we got? We got guitars. So micing up a speaker, there's 2 schools of thought that work rather well. You can either be on axis with it. One second, let me grab a prop. So we have our prop speaker. So we can either be right on axis, so every time we move this it stays right in the center. That's good. That's going to give you a nice clean tone and is a very good starting point. Now, if you have an abundance of channels, an abundance of money and time, you can add a second mic that is going slightly off axis. So if I turn this, my finger will be pointing towards the side. So instead of being like that, it's now like that. You still want it pointed at the center, but what you're trying to do is pick up some distortion in that. What that'll do is give you a fuller guitar tone. It's akin to doubling your guitar without having to do anything, except for having another mic. All that this is doing is having a slight time delay, and this can be a good strategy, especially in your heavy metal older tones where you really just want to drive it right into their skulls. Personally, I don't see a huge benefit of this because it's, you're just adding in another copy of the signal. You're only having a few nanoseconds or a few tens of hundreds of nanoseconds of differentiation between that. So you're not gonna see a huge change in it. For mic and acoustic guitars, you can use microphones, but you always want to use the internal DI. It lets them dance. An acoustic guitar dancing on stage is a pretty cool thing. The other thing that you can do is you can get a guitar stand that holds it so they can be like this and play their guitar all uncomfortably. Those work really well if you don't have a pickup and it's a really nice guitar and they only need it for one part of the song. But guitar stands, in my opinion, should kind of be avoided, at least the stand-up ones that are meant to be played. If you do run into a situation where you need to mic an acoustic guitar that doesn't have a DI or any sort of output, you just want to put the mic aiming basically right at the hole, or between the hole and the start of the frets. That's kind of the sweet spot where it's going to resonate the most in general. Every guitar is going to be different. There's going to be sweet spots through every different variation of guitar. Like, for instance, Spanish guitars, you usually want a mic lower down where the pickup controls would be because they're bigger and typically want to have more bass associated with them. And yeah. What else do we need to talk about today? What do you need to know? Wireless mics for vocals, super easy. Just an XLR in, just another microphone. If you're trying to set it up, make sure you have fresh batteries. Every show, fresh batteries, because you don't want interference to be picked up by your batteries dying and deathing everybody, or your mic just shits out. You want to make sure it's pretty darn close, be within 50 feet of the receiver, and also have line of sight. The mic pack is one of the things that you want not to fail. So if you can just have that mic pack have line of sight to the receiver, that will pretty much ensure that you'll have no problems. As for setting up channels, refer to the manual. There's some frequency bands in wireless technology that have been phased out and are now illegal. If you operate some of these, then what could happen is the FCC could come up in a little white truck and be like, hey, you're violating our airspace laws. Can you stop that? And you'll very uncomfortably nod your head, and then they'll may take your stuff or grant you a fine. It depends on where you're at. But just be sure your mic technology or your wireless mic technology is up to date, because if not, that could happen. And the bigger events you go to, or the bigger cities you go to, the more you'll see this policed. For instance, if you're doing any involvement with, like in the DC area, you will have to have a frequency spectrum chart where you basically just say, these are the frequencies we're using, cool. This is almost never an issue as long as you're up to date, but where this headache for us little guys is once you get into big time broadcasting, that's where you see, oh, they're using wireless video, they're sending 24 audio channels, they're implementing wireless controls for their cameras, you name it, they've done it. So that's why those rules are in effect. So yeah, if you ever come across those guys, don't freak out. They're just doing their jobs, and they do a pretty good job at it. But yeah, that's this tangent land rant on how to mic a stage. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.